How we doing, everyone? It's Tim and Sean here from Ooga Booga Edison. Got another top 16 over in Deck Devastators over the weekend. Definitely made some changes to the offering frogs. Tried to just show that the list can do some different things. It doesn't have to rely on some hyper combo-y list. So we tried out Aoi, Thestalos, Battle Fader. We tried out a salvage. Yeah, kind of an interesting take. I saw that like Marcus Hayden and some other people had some success with Aoi, and in theory, it should be really good with junk synchron because there's a lot of times that you just kind of want to summon junk, summon back swap, and bounce that junk for follow up, and maybe have that extra swap as a body for Aoi. In reality, Aoi was insane when it resolved and terrible when it didn't. I mean, I don't think this was quite the right list for it. I think maybe like a double salvage kind of list is probably a little bit better. But in regards to everything else, Solex in the main. So at RBT Indy, I actually didn't have Solex in the main or side, despite like main decking it in previous lists. I put it back in for here because I think this list has some interesting ways to get use out of it, and I also expected maybe some Gladiator Beast players that I might want Solex for, which did kind of come true. We did see a lot of GBs in this tournament. But in regards to why Solex, so a lot of lists, they can kind of struggle with this card because they're only playing maybe Caius and Ryza and something like Frog Hero. And otherwise it might just be Substitute. Obviously, Substitute plus Soul Exchange is one of the best going second place in the format. I would recommend it for anyone. However, you need to be balanced. And Caius plus Ryza, if you're playing that as your main ways to abuse Solex, your opponent's going to have a lot of boards where they just leave one monster on board, maybe a Vanity's Fiend or whatever it may be. And you don't really want to Solex plus Monarch, those kinds of cards. Instead, you want cards like Sphere or Thestalos if they have an open board. And then if you have a balance of both Sphere, Thestalos that can be used on an empty board, as well as Caius to punish overextensions, which can happen because Sphere of Chaos results in the opponent often having to put two bodies on the board. And I think this was kind of an interesting theory. In practice, I ended up kind of wanting Ryza in my hand more often than Thestalos, so I don't know if it would stay in the list, but I think, again, people need to try out maybe some of these ideas and see exactly what the right fit is. For Battle Fader, I wanted to try Sean actually tried that at RBT Indy, and he had some success with it. It is good, again, against the Gladiator Beast, which I expected a lot, trying to play the Solex and Fader. And yeah, just as a Sangan target to keep yourself alive against maybe some of the combo decks might be helpful. I didn't end up playing any combo, so it was okay. I ended up siding it a lot because I was facing a lot of birds that I expected oppression, deck dev, that kind of thing.
Yep, and with Soul Exchange as well, I did play Soul Exchange with Sphere, in my RBT indie list, and there are situations where Solexing into a Sphere sort of grabs you some tempo, whether you're searching Sangan to get Substitute, or you're searching Junk to set up some sort of synchro play, or even another combo play. Just because Spear has the advantage of not being able to be destroyed by battle once, so sometimes it's hard for your opponent to clear Spear, especially if you're Solexing away their monster. Of course, as well, Soul Exchange with Substitute is always broken, Soul Exchange with Caius, and then same thing with Thestalos. You can sort of turn this 2-for-2 sort of advantage, right, from these plays. So that was sort of the idea, in addition to a little bit more hand control with Aoi, which has gained some popularity over the last few weeks.
Yeah, we ended up seeing, I believe, 3 frog decks that topped with Aoi this weekend. So it's definitely a card to keep a lookout on. I was using it mostly experimentally. I came up with this list less than 12 hours before the event. And again, like there were times like I ripped a Whirlwind or I ripped their best Whirlwind summon in 2 different spots against Blackwing. And that definitely is, important. And the same with Vayu. Like there are often these games where the only card that I lose to is maybe a a Dark Armed against Vayu, or maybe a Return, or Burial. And being able to rip some of those cards is definitely interesting. It also lets you set cards like Treeborn comfortably against Blackwing when it otherwise would not be great. And it's also good against combo decks. Just being able to rip one of their pieces is definitely important, and I expected a lot of combo for an online event. We get a lot of more of the European players in some of these Deck Devastators tournaments, and they love their combo decks. I think people also just don't really like shuffling in person, and so they try to play some of these like forgs where you're shuffling 100 times in a match.
And one thing that's sort of interesting that Tim and I discussed after the event, I could not play in the event myself, but I was on, watching the stream and whatnot. So with Aoi, one thing I think we came into contact with was not playing enough waters at times. We're playing sort of a substandard frog package. 2 dupes is pretty standard, 3 sub, 3 swap. 1 Treeborn is sort of the difference, which actually I think we've seen a couple other lists at this point play 1 Treeborn in the main side the other. So Tim, what do you think about the 1 Treeborn, and sort of the maybe lower water count with Aoi?
Yeah, so I think overall I do like 1 Treeborn for these sphere lists that are trying to use a card like Ultimate Offering. However, as you're saying, I think our water count was a little bit low, and I also, the 1 salvage was probably not enough to keep some of these important cards in our hand. Swap Frog is actually really important in this list to be able to have the ability to combo with Ultimate Offering, or even just be able to bounce a Monarch at times, as well as some extra Junk Synchron plays. There's a lot of times that you want to go for a Junk Synchron into Black Rose, or Junk Synchron into a level 6, whatever it may be. And just using Aoi, I often use it as a neg 1, which is not really optimal. You really want to be able to use it on your Treeborn Frog, and when you're only playing 1 copy, it's not really what you want to be doing. So I think there's definitely more experimenting that people can do, but I'll probably move on from this for a bit and try out some other ideas. I still have a lot to explore here.
Definitely, and I think that, we sort of talked about this after RBET Indy, where Tim played a more aggro version of this deck, and I played a more conservative version of this deck. And Tim top 16'd, I bubbled, and then Tim, the following weekend top 16s again with a slightly different approach, but solid principles behind the deck. And it just shows that this deck can really change depending on what you're expecting to see in a tournament, what type of tournament it is, whether it's online or in person, and what little changes may gain you some favorable advantage. So we want you guys to cook up some stuff and keep this rolling, because I think we can say for certain at this point that the deck has proven itself to be a real contender at sort of these higher level events.
Yep. And then in regards to the side and extra, there aren't a ton of changes. For the extra, I just cut 1 Armory Arm to be able to play Herbelm. It never came up. But in theory, there are some spots where maybe they leave their board empty due to something like Soul Exchange or a Monarch that they're worried about, and you can get these Junk Synchron lines to be able to maybe rip a card from their hands. Never came up. Especially with Thestalos, I think people kind of wanted to keep their hand low. But again, just keeping them honest is nice. In the side, it's the same as RBT Indy. The only difference is I put in 1 Mind Crush for the Kaiku. Kaiku was pretty disappointing at Indy, and I just wanted another card that might help in the mirror and against some combo decks. Just, again, expecting a lot of combo in these online tournaments. Anyways, let's get on to the replays. We had a pretty wild run. A lot of good players in this tournament. Multiple Ultimate Time Wizard winners, RBT winners, Deck Devastators winners, very scary fields. Start off round 1 facing the Monster Mash. Gonna just refresh here just to make sure that we start from the go. So yeah, Monster Mash is actually something that I've experimented a lot with. It is a little too dangerous post-side, just because there's so many cards that can really hurt you. But situations like this where you go first and you get to set a Magical Merchant is where the deck can kind of shine. So yeah, I ended up not attacking this Merchant, just because generally if I'm going second and I have a Caius, I would rather Caius this set monster than try to attack into something that might be problematic. As well, if it's a dupe frog, I don't have a Gores to rely on to be able to protect my life. So yeah, I end up passing. And what can go wrong? Just about everything. They Merchant, mill, absolute disaster. They get an Avarice from it, and they also are able to mill Plague Spreader, Level Leader, Dandelion, and a plenty full grave for their Pot of Avarice. You'll also see they have Dark Grepher plus Sirocco, so this is not going to go well for me, as I'm sure you can already tell. They get their 2 tokens, which, if anything, might actually keep me alive, depending on what their synchro plays are. But again, they have Plague to just be able to send these away. So he goes for a Grepher play, ditches the Vayu, summons Dark Simorgh. I feel like he could have killed me here. I feel like there was a Grepher line to discard Sirocco and special summon it, and I think I'm dead. But maybe he didn't want to play into Gores. That's possible. Yeah, I'm shocked. I feel like there must have been a Plague Spreader line to synchro with these and clear out your board to be able to make a push. Think it doesn't matter though, because my hand is unfortunately just not strong enough for. He is on his second turn and he has a board of 5 monsters plus 5 monsters in hand. This is not going to go well. I do get to make a Treeborn play. In regards to what to attack, I think you always have to attack the Grepher just to make room and also just make their synchro plays a little less strong. So yeah, we go on from here. I said Torrential. Again, he makes a pretty slow play, going for an Arms Ring. I have the option to Torrential here, but I think I would just die because I think he has a value play. Yeah, I did not want to use Torrential here, hoping that I could just save it a little bit longer. I don't think it would help me if I had used it there. I'm just going to fast forward from here, go for a 5, make Android, try to get my life points a little higher and also keep the Substitoad on board as an extra body. He gives me a little more time here, showing that like some of these cards can be a little slow. Cards like Fate or Gores as your battle traps that you have to play in a deck like this, as well as Merchant, Raikou that, again, you want to set. But nonetheless, he summons the Armor Master, and I'm in this awkward spot where if I Torrential, I think I'm just dying a lot. I think he gets to go for Arms Wing. He gets to maybe slam a Grepher, yada yada. So I'm holding this Torrential as long as I possibly can. Gets the Grepher play, sends this. Again, I held Torrential, but if I use it, he just uses Vayu and kills me. So, whatever. We go on to game 2. This is where I think Mash can really struggle. Dust Shoot is very good against them. End up getting to take the Tragodia. Special swap. Because I want to be able to deal 34 to potentially kill him next turn. I already know his hand. I know he has no real threat of a play. And I'm able to Caius the other one, get a kill in here. Nice quick game 2, as it can be against Mash, unfortunately. Game 3, he opens up, and he opens with a Raikou. Again, we just have such a nice soul exchange here. Being able to clear this Raikou without getting him any mills that might make his debris live. In the choice between Thestalos and Substitoad, I'm generally going to rather use the Subtoad when I have no traps in my hand to protect myself, as well as being able to thin the grave and get a Treeborn engrave for Thestalos, I think you generally want a Subtoad first.
And one thing about Soul Exchange and some other matchups is, against Blackwings, you can shut off their Icarus. Against Value, you get Hamster Ico. Against Frogs, even if they leave Subtoad up, you can tribute that off, or if they go for a soft lock. There's just a lot of advantages to something like Soul Exchange, especially in games 2 and 3.
We Thestalos, we ripped the level leader. Unfortunately, he drew, I believe, Magical Merchant for turn. And again, he just is able to draw mill like his entire deck. He gets a Plague Engrave, he gets a Value Engrave, gets a Dandy. The level leader's in there. Things are not really looking that great. I'm able to summon a Tragodia. At least I have the Crow for the Plague, which is nice, but he has some really scary cards in his hands. If anything, I think I'm like overall losing right now. Able to get a Swap Frog. Here's a tough spot. I think you just always are attacking with Tragodia. But the question is, whether am I going to kill these tokens? I think my odds of dying felt a little bit higher if I did kill the tokens, and I was trying to pretty much extend this game as long as possible, because in my eyes, my late game is a lot stronger, as well as having the Crow for the Avarice means that I can stop him from refueling. And so yeah, my goal is to pretty much extend this game. Get the 600 in. Sack for Thestalos off in main phase 2 to make sure that I keep 5 cards in hand for this Tragodia. He goes for a Debris play, goes into Iron Chain. Is this correct? I think maybe he can consider going for Stardust instead, but it does board lock him. Maybe he was a little bit worried about that. I don't think it ends up mattering too much because we have Soul Exchange in hand, but I probably would have gone for a Stardust here. We draw, and I messed up. I was supposed to mill with the Iron Chain. We end up milling 3 traps, which is pretty insane for a deck that only plays maybe 7 or 8 traps. But we are siding into some extras. I get the Soul Exchange play for another Thestalos. And again, when you don't play traps in some of these slower decks, I think Thestalos can really thrive. At the same time, I'm discarding some good cards from his hand. I discarded a Sirocco. I discarded a level leader earlier. It's not exactly what you want to do.
It was Brain Control earlier.
Yeah, Brain Control was definitely a good rip. I think the second Thestalos is fine, just in case this one gets cleared. I have a Torrential in case something really goes wrong, and I also have Gorse protects my life. At this point, I'm feeling pretty good, so I'm just going to fast forward through the rest. We just have a little too much for him to deal with, and Thestalos is going to carry us. He does end up getting some good pressure here, though, by being able to go for 3,300. If he had summoned the level leader, it's another 6. But the Gores can handle a lot of that. I still have to be fearful of something like a Gallus play that could mill for 2k. And I think like a top deck Avarice is also scary. I don't know exactly how many he's playing here. I'll just keep fast forwarding through this one. I think it's pretty much a wrap. Draws a Gallus, which he can mill for fun, but it's not going to do anything. We just have too much. On to the next game, 1-0. We're here against Genghis Khan, who is playing Blackwing. Blackwing is a deck that I definitely have a lot of experience against. At the RBET, my Swiss rounds were 1 Gladiator Beast, 1 Hero Frog, and then the rest were either Blackwing or Value. And then I also played Blackwing in Top Cut and ended up losing that one. This tournament, I also had quite a few Blackwing. In terms of when to AOE, so I set the Treeborn and I set the AOE, and you can either shotgun it here, which I think is fine, but I kind of wanted to try to bait out maybe something that would try to remove my Speller Trap or my Treeborn first. So I let him attack first. I use the AOI. I rip the Gores, which is decent here. It also gives me the information of Bottomless Travel that might come up in this next turn, as I have the 1-for-1 play. He has the choice between redeclaring directly or not, and I think he's probably a little bit scared of maybe a Gores play or a Trag play. So he decides to just pass. I get to go 1-for-1, go for normal Sangan, which is really just the dream spot for Sangan, is interacting with Substoad, where you get to get this follow-up as well as setting up a dupe block. And because of this information of Bottomless Trapple, I don't have to go for the Caius line. I can get a Unifrog down and actually clear the card and then set up a dupe block in main phase 2. I know that he has a Blizzard, but making a level 6 isn't really good for him right now. He would have to Brainiac 2 cards, and that's just a huge investment that I'm totally okay with when I have Brain Caius Junk for follow-up. And honestly, this game's kind of a wrap already. He does draw the Dust Shoot, which is a good card here, but I don't think it's going to quite do enough. He makes just a pass play, which luckily I draw the second Caius, so what is he going to do here? We can fast forward from here. I don't think he has a ton to do.
Yeah, overall, I think this is a good example of,
the power of AOI if you're going first. I definitely wanted to play AOI as an experiment, but I do think that it does thrive a bit going first. Otherwise, you can have these kind of awkward spots where you're dealing with facing too much aggression. Anyways, on to game 2. We put in D-Prisons, Dust Tornadoes, Raigeki Breaks. We set Dupe, set Dust. He has a Torrential. It's actually... I'm not going to show both hands for now. Yeah, so you're facing one back row against Blackwing. You have the option here of tributing or not. I think I end up probably not tributing. Yep, I just pass, which is pretty normal. He goes for Sirocco, which I don't really have much to do with. So that's one. I have the choice of whether to Dust Tornado or not. I think there's a good chance that it's a card like Icarus Attack or Deck Dev, which is why I do decide to Dust Tornado. As well, if it was a draw trap, I wouldn't want to wait. Generally, you want to try to Dust Tornado in the end phase against this deck, unless you want to save it for something like Oppression or Black Whirlwind. There are times that like your hand is just too prone to cards like that, that I would not use a Dust Tornado here. But especially having Heavy Storm, if you did have a Black Whirlwind, I am okay with using this Dust Tornado here. Goes on to my turn. We normal swap, Sentry. I don't really want to tribute this this Dupe Frog here. It's actually serving me a pretty important role. I set the Deep Prison. Again, I have the choice between setting it or not, and I kind of look at this game at, okay, I have a hand of cards that can accumulate advantage, so I'm going to try to set the Deep Prison, protect my life. He's just kind of passing with this awkward hand. I don't know exactly what he has going on. I set the Swap Frog here with the idea that there's a chance that he won't attack on this following turn, and I don't want to give him too much time. I don't have enough defense to justify just giving him multiple turns to draw into something like a Whirlwind play or maybe even a Deck Dev play. Despite my hand being pretty resilient to Deck Dev with Thestalos and Sphere. He passes again. I don't know how I feel about this. I didn't know his hand at the time. He does not really want to stick the Kalut to get over the Dupe Frog, as that's not really a favorable trade for him. But we're gonna see that like this deck has just way too many ways to convert advantage. He also had a Torrential, which justifies holding off for all this time, and it does make my Dupe Frog miss timing. but I was kind of okay with this exchange. I definitely could have considered something like Set Dusk. I should have maybe thought a little bit more about it, just because I think you can make a read on Torrential. But nonetheless, we keep going. We rip a Blizzard, which is nice, even though it's not live. It's a fine 1-for-1 exchange compared to if we had a Caius there or a Ryza. It wouldn't really do anything into this Torrential board. We draw Ultimate Offering. It is time. We have Swap Frog Engrave. We have Sphere. We have Heavy. We have everything that we need. And this is one of the nice interactions between Dust Tornado and Offering, if I have to guess. He does have the Crow for our Treeborn, which is beautiful. If he had held this Crow for the Swap Frog, I'm actually put in a kind of awkward situation. I likely have sided out Sangan, so I can't get it off of Sphere of Chaos to use that to synchro with the Junk Synchron and make a add Substitoad to continue our combo. So if he had held the Crow for the Swap Frog, I think this could have been a slightly more interesting game. Instead, we get to normal the Junk, special the Swap. We're never really synchroing here. It is a little scary to leave up this Swap Frog for a potential Shura play, but as you'll see, we can set the Dust Tornado, and even if he does Shura, there's no real scary outcome. I think the biggest concern for us right now is Dark Armed, by far. Dark Armed would definitely have put us in a tougher spot. We would be relying on some top decks and probably lose the game. But nonetheless, we ride. He normals Dyna. We're okay with this. He sets a couple. With Dust Tornado in hand, we really want to be able to set the Offering this turn. Just in case he does have the out to the Junk Synchron, maybe we can tribute for Sphere. And we're just looking to combo. It is time. Even if it happens in main phase 2, we're at 8k life. We really just can't pass it up right now. We draw Substitoad. He thinks that solomoning this might keep his Dyna around, which I don't blame him for. He doesn't really have a ton of options. His Blizzard is not live. He didn't draw very well this game overall. As well as banishing the Kalute may have put him a little out of reach with double Blizzard in hand.
And one interesting spot in this situation is something that actually came up for Tim in RVT Indy as well, where the Ultimate Offering activation in the end phase, assuming maybe one of them is Solemn, which is hard to read as it is, could be potentially beneficial, although right in this scenario, we had just set it with Dust Tornado, so we wouldn't be able to activate it in the end phase. However, if you have Ultimate Offering active, and they haven't, solemned it, assuming that, if you were paying 500 life points to summon the monster, they cannot solemn.
Yeah. He ends up in a tough spot, not really having a easy read on this Ultimate Offering. We get to tribute for Sphere of Chaos to be able to clear the Fossil Dyna, and then you will see main phase 2, we're able to combo. So this is an interesting part of the deck that where most decks don't really want to do much of their comboing during main phase 2, this deck can actually do it. You can turn one swap into multiple by bouncing it and sending another swap. It's going to cost a lot of life points, but I'm not really afraid of one card, especially now that he still has Dark Arm Dragon live, so that is scary. I could consider maybe going for even Stardust. He's just going to attack over it. So yeah, I end up making this board of it looks kind of awkward, but you do have Dupe Frog as just, an extra layer of follow-up in case he were to go for something like Shura plus Gale into Black Rose. Not that it would be super exciting, but unfortunately he has a brick. We're on to the next one. So we're 2-0 going to the next round. We face Duck Tracy, who is another good player. I've only, I think, faced him online, but nonetheless. He is going to be playing, I believe, Vayu. Yeah, Vayu. So this is a matchup where a lot can go wrong, honestly. They can have a deck dev. They can have a burial return play that goes wrong. We don't really have the defense that other decks might have. And we also don't have the first turn explosiveness that I would love to have in something like Forks. So we go on from here. He dust shoots, hits our only monster. We're left with this terrible hand. It's not looking great. He sent a Necro on his first turn, which is pretty standard, but it could suggest maybe a Caius in hand, or just that he has another Dark that he wants to send. I think it is valuable to protect the Greffer, so it's pretty standard to send the Necro here. In terms of what's a set, I end up setting the Torrential and the Dust Shoot. I did this with the plan that I want to protect my Torrential from something like MST, and I understand that this Dust Shoot might be dead, but I have a heavy anyways, so if anything, I think you might as well just set it here. He's only going to make his hand smaller with something like Dark Greffer, so we might as well. He goes for an attack for 17, not wanting to overextend into Torrential, which makes sense. We draw Caius. I'm never really going to use 1-for-1 here, but I definitely could have considered it. It does give you the access to a Substode combo, but with Torrential set, I wanted to first get this Torrential live and then try to use my salvage. I also would love for them to set some more cards to make my Heavy Storm a little bit more live. Yeah, I'd love to be able to heavy before you go for this 1-for-1 salvage shenanigans. He does set the return, which I think is probably, I don't know if it ends up deciding the game or anything like that, but knowing that I have Heavy Storm, I think it is a risky play. I definitely could have pro set heavy here instead of the Dust Shoot. I
think he was maybe worried about you dust shooting him if he left that card in his hand.
Right, yeah, which does put him in an awkward situation where if he does just hold it, he does get dust shooted. It ends up putting him in a tough spot here as we're able to we 1-for-1 first so that we can summon our Substode, get value out of this Torrential by using priority Substode, Chainlink 2 Torrential. He set an Armageddon Knight, and this had me thinking. I was trying to figure out why he would ever do this. I'm guessing it's to maybe bluff a Raikou or a Hamster, but he knows I have the Torrential, so can't say I really understand that one. Maybe we'll figure it out in a bit.
Maybe he wanted to flip it and get an effect on flip summon. I'm not sure.
Yeah, and it does trigger when it's flip summoned, so that's interesting.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely an odd play, I'd say. I just go for the Swap Frog play. I don't go for the salvage yet because I want to leave the option of being able to Caius a Gores instead. Go for this in main phase 2. I have the choice between going dupe or sub-dupe, but with the access to the second Substode in hand, I don't really feel the need to end on sub-dupe. Draw Aoi for turn. It's definitely an interesting card. I think it's pretty good here because we're going to get extra hand knowledge, and also while you're ahead, it feels really nice to just have a turn where you summon Tree and Aoi. I also have maybe a line to get into Unifrog for this back row. I am a little scared of some possible things like Torrential, but I would much rather try to go for the Unifrog into Torrential than to go for a Caius where my Dewfrogs could miss timing. So I bring back Tree, normal sub, no prio to make sure that I don't get Torrential to make them miss timing. Summon back Uni, attack. First with the sub in case of, let's say this was a bottomless or a not a Torrential. Let's say this was a bottomless and he has Gores in hand. Again, you want to attack with Substode first. Deal 500. Set the Aoi in main phase 2. Get the hand information. We get to rip the Whirlwind when he has Shurikalut in hand. Again, just showing Aoi can deal with some of these problem cards like Whirlwind, and you're leaving them in a very tough spot. They can't really commit to the board because they know they're going to get Caius'd a lot and they don't get to attack anyways. We draw probably the best card in the deck in Junk Synchron, and you're going to see it's not quite game because we don't have enough waters. But we can summon a pretty big junk warrior. I could have synchroed with someone like Unifrog to make it a little bit bigger. But this already puts it at 32. We're going to put him on pretty much a 2-turn clock if you're considering the Caius. And I actually did the math wrong. It's 29. We draw Sphere. He gets to Necro, but not in the way that you want to Necro. We're just a little too ahead on card advantage. We do make the read on the Torrential, so we don't try to extend it to something like Caius. Not that we would need to. Attack with the Unifrog first to avoid deprisoning our Junk Warrior. Hit the Torrential, and we're on to the next one.
I think that's a good example of, how powerful something like AOA can be. He had Shura Whirlwind, and, taking that Whirlwind essentially crippled his hand. Granted, we were already in a winning position, but it sort of just guaranteed that he wouldn't be able to fight back.
Right, let's just avoid things like Blizzard and Gale that can complicate the game by ways of Black Rose or Brionac or whatever it may be. He normals value, attacks our Unifrog. We have the Mirror Force set. I'm left with this decision of whether to Mirror Force. I don't place really enough value in the Unifrog to activate Mirror Force here. I would rather just hold it. We're not really in a rush. I would rather save it for something like a Shura or a Bora that's trying to attack into our Treeborn, something like that. Normal junk. Summon Uni. Left with the synchro decision of whether we're going to synchro. We always attack first just to play around things like Bottomless. He Icaruses. Pops my back row. And I'm kind of okay with this. This was, again, an interesting spot because I could have Mirror Force here, but then he ends up keeping the Icarus. And I kind of want the Icarus gone to allow me for something like an offering play. The awkward spot, though, is that it's going to leave my Unifrog up for something like Shura. Luckily, he doesn't have it. He just has a Sirocco play. Sets one. Deck Devies. Again, our hand is just beautiful into Deck Dev. We get the Treeborn that's going to get into our standby. Sorry. It's going to get into our grave for whenever we need it. We have DD Crow to chain to make his value dead off the Sirocco. We're in a decent spot. We don't have a play. We're down 2 cards, but we have Treeborn access. We have Gorge for protection, and we have Solex for whenever we draw that Monarch or Substode. He goes for a Burial play and summons the Fossil Dyna. Now we're in a much rougher spot, but again, if we draw a Monarch, we're actually doing okay. He has his own MST here. MST's our MST. We lose. On to the next one. Fortunately, just can't really do much there. The deck dev can be pretty problematic if you don't see some of your other cards, like your Monarchs and your Spheres. Sitting here in this opening hand, you have the decision of, am I just going to set Offering? Am I going to set Unifrog? For me, I ended up drawing the AOA. Sorry, I just passed. I don't really want to risk something like setting the Uni into an MST play, because if I'm going to set this Uni, I also want to set the Offering, just so that if he did have Shura, I could tribute for Sphere in his battle phase and add a Junk Synchron. However, it just loses a little too hard to MST when I didn't really feel the need to commit that way. We draw here into AOI, and again, this is a -1 AOI. It's not the most exciting thing in the world, but we have plays. We AOI, look at their hand. We rip a Sirocco. At this point, his hand, I believe, was like double Whirlwind. He has Blizzard, Fossil Dyna, Mirror Force, Whirlwind, Whirlwind. Yeah, we can just show both at this point. And yeah, I think you always take the Sirocco here. It's kind of awkward, though. I would love to just take Mirror Force, but honestly, Offering, it just has this beautiful ability to just push through and often end on something like Mistworm or Brionac or right, whatever you might want. Either way, it's not going to rely on the battle phase. It's not going to worry about Mirror Force. I have the option to take Blizzard if I'm maybe worried about Icarus attack here, which I think is a decent line. but I actually want him to normal this Blizzard and not just let this game go on. I would rather him normal the Blizzard and try to get this value in hand than for him to normal the Dyna and maybe not let us kill him that turn. So we take Sirocco. He goes for double Whirlwind, normal Blizzard. Gets a value. Sorry, the Sirocco's... Oh, he gets double value. Right, because he's playing hybrid. He attacks in. So again, I have the option there in battle phase of just normaling the junk. But I think if I do that, there's a better chance that he sets the Mirror Force. I just wanted to conceal information there because I wasn't too worried about the 1200. We draw Breaker. Breaker is such a beast with offering. Just lets us hit the back row, and I don't know if we can tell, it's game. I actually maybe could have done even more damage if I go for a Junk Warrior and I brain control the Blizzard to be able to gain 1300, but this is clean and fine. It's 24, 4K, 56, 69, 8200. That's game. We're now 3-0. Looking pretty solid, but I think we got a little lucky here, let's be honest. I did kind of get punished for siding out the Sangan, as it would have allowed us to really go crazy. But that's something that's going to come up later and actually punish us. The decision of whether to side out Sangan is really tough. And on one hand, it only gets punished by hard drawing it because you want it for the combo piece. But when you do hard draw it against something like Blackwing, Gladiator Beast, it can just sit in your hand. Same with Frogs. Do you really want to set that and get Caiused? Do you want to set it and get Shurd or Borid? Do you want to set it and let them have an easy Gladiator Beast target? Usually your plan against Gladiator Beasts is to try to stick a big body that they can't attack over.
No, exactly. I think Tim brings up a good point there. Him and I have gone back and forth on, this exact debate of keeping Sangan in or not. Personally, my philosophy, I agree with Tim wholeheartedly that against, GBs, Blackwings, Frogs, there's a significant risk of, hard drawing that Sangan, setting it, and having it be, get really punished for it. But there is some combo lines, especially with Brionac, where it can be, the difference between killing them that turn and having the game go on. So that sort of, debate is still ongoing.
Yep, and it actually did punish me in both top 16 of this tournament, as you'll see soon, as well as top 16 of RBET Indy. So it's definitely something I need to keep considering, keep evaluating. I just have also seen when I do keep it in that it can be an absolutely terrible card in your hand. Anyways, have you seen a more beautiful hand? Wow. Alton Offering, Junk Synchron, Sphere of Chaos, Swab Frog, Kai, Soul Exchange. How do we lose this?
I would say this is the dream.
This is pretty much optimal. I think maybe switch out the Soul Exchange for like a Mystical Space Typhoon or a Dust Shoot.
Or brain control.
Right, and then we have the optimal hand. He just passes, and yeah, I think you can see how this goes. We are going to bring back the Substode. Just so that we have access to 2 Substodes, why not? Might as well. We're gonna use Offering, normal, okay, sure. Normal sub. What are we gonna end on here? We have 5,600 life. We don't really have to worry about Gores because that's already engraved. We really can do whatever we want here. If I didn't have Gores engraved, I would go for a 5,300 junk, and then I would go for a 4,300 junk and a 3,300 junk, and then I would equip the 3,300 junk with an armory arm, as you might have seen in some other combo lines, and if not, watch out for that video coming soon.
Yep, that's a guaranteed way to put 7K on board through Gores, which basically makes them dead to a single Caius if you draw it. There's plenty of ways to do 1,000 damage, and that sort of situation for your opponent puts them, in a really tough spot. But one thing I like to point out, right, is an interesting spot about the Offering Frog list is, one back row really makes them think. If it is Offering, you do have the combo, then they're in danger of dying, right, when they would have thought, oh, okay, I have time to play, right. He thought summoning Card Trooper, instead of sending the hamster, was perfectly fine because he was at 8,000 life and we only had, one back row and, and one set monster. But turns out that that wasn't enough.
Yeah, he might have also known that we were on Frog, so maybe he wanted to avoid a potential special swap, kind of Caius play. I think Card Trooper was logical. It's just, unfortunately, Ultimate Offering can do some very scary things very quickly. Anyways, here, I end up specialing swap on this turn 1. Interesting spot. If you want to go slow, you can just normal swap, sentry, move on with your day. For me, I wanted to get Substoad access as our hand is a little inactive here. We have Dust and MST, and he didn't set anything on his first turn. And I think whenever you can get Substoad access early, you're probably going to be happy. We send sub. This is a very common play in this Junk Frog deck by having triple junk, that you're able to pretty much get Substoad access without having to draw it. He hits me with the Crow, but this is fine. I'll bounce the junk during main phase 1 in case it was someone like Raiko. I would much rather him hit the swap. Do have the option of going for a Synchro, but it loses to something like a Raiko. Unfortunately, it's a Necro Gardener. We're going to take 300, but that's okay. His hand is not super exciting here. He goes for an Allure. Again, back-to-back games where he's just drawing a handful of monsters. This is not usually going to do it against Frog Monarchs unless you have some insane Dark Grepher line. We go on. He normal Sirocco attacks. I don't think he really had any other option. He's not really going to go for a Plague play or anything like that. We take 10. We draw into this kind of awkward spot. But again, we bounce the junk. And he was able to use Crow on a Substoad, but it doesn't really do much when you already have the swap access. We now have Treeborn access. We're in a really good spot. We go for Tree. Do you ever sack for Sphere here? Apparently, yes. Why I did this, you do have the option of going for junk, but he already has the Necro Engrave, and I also didn't want to really put him on 3 darks here. I was a little bit worried about Dark Arms as my hand does very little into it. And if I did go for something like a 6 and I do get Dark Arms, now I'm left with this Sphere where if I summon it, it's going to be very negative tempo compared to the option of having 2 junks in hand and still having this Sphere and having the Mirror Force for protection, where I think this was actually a good call.
I would agree. One nice thing about Spear, which we've already talked about, is its resilience to being destroyed, at least once by battle. So your opponent is sort of forced into this situation where they have to commit to, outing the Spear, which can be, advantageous for you, especially when you, plan to crack back with Caius or you plan to crack back with junk, as well as if this Spear lives, then with junk in your hand, you have the option to go for a level 8 Synchro, or since we have the level 1, even something like Mistworm is a possibility in the right scenario, which I think is, something that frogs don't have a lot of. It's monsters that, can interact on your opponent's turn, besides do frog, of course. So, with frogs, you want them to commit, and you sort of want to crack back with your monarchs or your synchro plays. So it can be very good.
Yep, and then in terms of the option of what to set, you have Mirror Force, MST, Dust Tornado. He hadn't set any spells or traps this match, so I was worried about the possibility of a Heavy Storm. So I decided to just set the Dust Tornado here. Again, I'm not too worried about this dying. I'd rather save my Mirror Force for the following turn when I am probably facing a little bit more. Right on cue, draws Dark Arm Dragon, which is the card that we were worried about. He's able to go for a normal Armag, send Plague, and all of a sudden, not looking great. He's able to banish Crow, pop, banish, pop. We're dead. Yeah, so unfortunately, top deck Dark Armed is always scary. We luckily have this beautiful combo of Offering plus Sphere, as well as the Gorge in our hand to protect, double trap. It is just a nice hand despite having no tribute fodder right now. We just go for the pass on turn 1, which on one hand it does telegraph Gorge, but what are we going to comfortably set here? We don't want to be faced with having to Raigeki break something like Armageddon Knight. We don't really want to set Offering to kill off our Gores, and same idea with Dust Tornado. We'd rather just pass, maybe hope that he does make this decision to attack. I don't blame him for attacking. He has Mirror Force in hand as well as a bunch of other resources. So we get the Gores, and he top decked Dark Arms. We are very capable of top decking too. We draw Heavy Storm into Mirror Force Torrential. What a dream spot.
It's almost like Yugimoto himself was playing the deck.
Oh, yeah. No, definitely a beautiful card here. Because we can't comfortably summon Caius or Sphere into the possibility of Mirror Force or Torrential. Having them both out of the way is just going to let us play the rest of this game so aggressively. I think if we don't draw those cards, we probably are just going to switch Gores to attack, try to attack. He probably Mirror Forces, but maybe not. I do have the issue that if I don't clear this Armageddon Knight, he could maybe go for a Black Rose line. I do decide to switch it because of that to make sure that I clear this Armag as well as Caius that I'm a little bit fearful of. We attack. He Necros here. Interesting decision. He's pretty much forcing us to crash with our token. I don't think it's great because the Armageddon Knight is going to get cleared anyways, and I don't really place a ton of value in this. But in this scenario, it does make it so that I can't comfortably tribute this for Sphere. We continue. I don't even attack. I just would rather tribute, get the Caius on board, deal 1,000, and again, keep him very far away from any sort of Dark Arm shenanigans, as probably something like Heavy Grepher Dark Armed is like the only way that we're really going to lose this game when we're +3 on like turn 2. So yeah, set Dust Tornado, set Raigeki Break. We don't have to set Offering because Dust Tornado, again, can just have that beautiful effect to set it. It also protects us from Heavy Storm, which is just such a nice use for Dust Tornado. He has the Sirocco here. I understand he's probably going to Special Gale. I don't know why else he would do this. But he summons it. We have the choice of Raigeki Breaking. Do you do it here? I decided no. I wasn't too scared of him going Stardust. I also thought that the fact that he summoned Gale in defense suggested that maybe he was going to try to attack first. Should he attack first? I don't think so. I don't think he saw Dimensional Prison at all, game 2. But that would be one reason maybe to avoid going for something like Stardust in main phase 1. He pumps up to 33, attacks over the Caius. Do decide to use it here just to avoid any issues. Have the Dust Tornado, and you can see this game is probably going to go poorly for him. I sack Gores for Sphere. This was a mistake since I already know that Mirror Force Torrential are gone. I'm not really sure why I would do this.
I think you did it because it was halved, so it was only 1350.
Yeah, that makes sense. He has a return play. Get a little scared here, but honestly, he's going to have to way overcommit into a Plague play. What is he going to go for? Mistworm? That doesn't really do anything. Does do something for a turn, though. That is, like, secretly his only way of maybe winning this game is going for, like, Mistworm, but I don't know what he's top decking. You know, it looks like it was Royal Oppression. So I don't blame him for going for a line like this. Unfortunately, he originally attacks my Caius, and then is like, oh, actually, I want to attack Sphere. That's unfortunate, because that does not destroy a battle, and he loses.
Yeah, I think in that situation, even if he had gone Mistworm, you have junk to go into Catasters, so it doesn't really, matter too much. I mean, he was in a position where he had to make a plague play that was not going to, have enough impact to, keep him in the game, unfortunately.
Yep. So we move on 4-0, going to round 5. Round 5, we're facing one of the GOATs, Samu Pusteno, eventually the champion of this weekend. Very talented player, 2-time Deck Devastators winner. Have a lot of respect for Samu. Here we go. I know he's on value, as he often is. We open this nice little hand of beautiful Solex going second. Now, which one do you summon, Thestalos or Sphere? Do you Heavy Storm first? These are the options that you got to think about. I decided not to Heavy Storm, as these don't really, I'm not really worried if these get Bottomless or Torrential. All that really matters is that I'm getting the Soul Exchange off here, and I would rather save it for maybe a Junk Synchron play. I go for Sphere over Thestalos, thinking that I was facing value and I would rather wait for their hand to get a little bit smaller before I Thestalos. Ends up kind of punishing me here because if I hit the Dark Greffer or the Dark Armed, he's put in a bit more of an awkward spot if he doesn't draw a Dark. And it also it doesn't help me a ton. I wanted to get Sangan to try to get some Swap Frog access or Subsoda access, especially with Pot of Avarice. So I did go for the Sphere instead of the Thestalos. But TBD about what it was correct.
I think I would agree, in this situation that something like Spear is a bit better. I had mentioned this earlier that, Soul Xing into a Spear does give you tempo, like you said, Tim, which can be very valuable, especially when, right, you have cards like Avarice in your hand, so you sort of want to turn that on as quickly as you can. And in this case, Spear into Sangan sort of accomplishes that goal.
Right. I think the deck dev that he draws puts me in a pretty tough spot here because he's going to have pretty solid line going down the road. Obviously, he can't attack yet. He only attacks for 100. I Heavy Storm to try to clear the way for this Junk Synchron play. Here's an interesting spot. Why did I go Dark End? Oh, because he had Necrogarda, and I wanted to deal with it. But if I do go Stardust, then it does let me set this offering a little bit more comfortably, and it makes sure that the Sangan will get in the grave without me dying. The issue is that if he just Necros and draws a Dark, he can just ditch, summon Dark Armed, attack, deck dev me, and I'm getting my Sangan search ripped. So I think this was fine just to go Dark End first and make sure that his Necro doesn't matter. Thought Ruler isn't very good. I think it's either Dark End or Stardust, and I think if you go Stardust, you don't really want to leave their Greffer up when they can just make an easy Plague play to out your Stardust. I set the offering here thinking, okay, I need to get this Sangan Thestalos rolling. He draws Sirocco, summons Dark Armed, and it's rough. It is rough. The thing about Stardust is that if he did banish the Necro, it would have put him at just the value engrave. He would have drawn Sirocco in hindsight, and then I just lose anyways. So I think this game was really just kind of exposing how much Dark-Armed Dragon is a problem for us. We have all these traps that just don't do a ton into it, and even post-side, like Dimensional Prison is not super helpful. You really need a discard trap or a Torrential, or you're in a tough situation. He's able to pop 2 of my cards, and what am I going to do from here? Unfortunately, he has the deck dev too. Even though it only rips 1 card, we just didn't see Treeborn access. We have a Dead Avarice. This is an example of why I only play 1 or 2 Avarice, as when it just sits as an extra card in your hand, you often are waiting a little too long for it to get value. He goes for a pretty aggressive line, tributing for Sirocco, just knowing that my hand's dead, which makes sense. I draw a Unifrog, of course, it's dead, but it lets me Avarice. I have to Avarice or else I lose to any draw. Yeah, we lose. Going to game 2. In terms of the value matchup, for whether to go for 1 turn 1. Pros and cons. I think it thins the deck so that you have less draws in the late game when they do resolve their deck dev. For my hands, I wanted to get the Treeborn and actually get that value. I also wanted to leave the option of being able to brain control with the Substone. I extra normal the dupe here, thinking that I actually want him to extend onto the board with a brain control play. If he was faced with a situation where maybe he has like Raikou plus a Greffer or Armag play, then I want to be able to normal the dupe to make sure that I'm not getting screwed here. He goes for a nice normal special Greffer, so that he's able to set the Ryko in main phase 2. I have the deep prison for the armed wing, and my plan is to be able to brain control the Greffer. Pass. We draw an MST, which is pretty good here. We get the MST, brain control, attack, just in case it's Ryko. He pops the Tree Worn, mill 3, 1 for 1 in main phase 2. How are we losing this? How did we lose this? He has 3 darks. He draws Sirocco. It's terrible.
We lose Dark Arm. Only Dark Arm.
Unfortunately, could not account for Rekeki Break. Okay. Fortunately, the replay is bugged, but spoiler, he draws Dark Armed and kills me. Unfortunately, this replay is bugged. So yeah, that's a little spoiler. He just draws Dark Armed and kills me with Burial Dark Armed. Next up, we have Gladiator Beast, everyone's favorite. Tough matchup for me, but it is a little bit better without playing the Reckless Upstart stuff, as Reckless is just not what you want in that matchup. Also, we get to play Soul Exchange, great card against Gladiator Beast. We open, going second. He goes for a Dust Shoe play. We could scoop here, but normally if I was in a tournament, I would just conceal information probably a lot. But he draws Cat. Yeah, that's a wrap. On to game 2. Not really what you want against Gladiator Beast to have just this quick game 1, because I think game 1, if anything, if we win that game 1, I think we win more than 70% of matches. But without it, it's tough. Normal's ready, Ari. We Mirror Force. I pro set heavy here, thinking that, alright, I'm always going to activate this Mirror Force. If I do get Test Tigered, I just lose if he hits the heavy. But at least if he Test Tigers, hits the heavy with Bestiari, we can Mirror Force the Bestiari. He sets 2, Book of Moon Trap Stun, and beautiful. He has no other spells or traps. This heavy is going to go hard here. We have the Battle Fader, which, again, great card for this matchup. Super huge compared to a Tragodia or a Gorse, which are terrible. We get to make a Junk Synchron BrainCon play, go for an 8, Stardust Dragon, set 3. Try, whenever you have Stardust, I think you have more reason to just set your bluffs. He says War Chariot, we have the Destinato, we get to attack. This game is not going well for him. He just has too many monsters, which can happen with these decks. He normal Sidra, tries to attack. We just have too much, and even then we're going to offering him combo there, but we didn't need to because we don't want to show that information. Here is a very interesting spot. This is probably one of the most interesting matches of the day. Most interesting games, at least. All right, so he has the Quarry, 2 back row, 3 cards in hand. Normal swap, pretty standard, but it doesn't feel great. You are expecting this to get ready Ari a lot, so why would you even do this? Why wouldn't you go for a special play? Well, that's a little too much of an overextension, and I would love to be able to bait out a Chariot to clear the way for this offering play. We said offering and pass. He draws Trap Stun. Okay, decisions. This is part of the beauty of Ultimate Offering. He has to worry about things like discard traps and torrential tribute. And so he doesn't go for the Test Tiger play into Bestiari. He hasn't seen offering yet this match. It punishes him here. We're able to go offering, set the Substoad, let him deal 200 damage to himself, and then Caius him. I think maybe I should consider going Chainlink 1, Chainlink 2. Normal the Caius is Chainlink 2, set the Substoad as Chainlink 1. That would have given me some protection from something like main phase 2 Test Tiger, hit the offering. It gives us like a nice play. And also, yeah, I think that also protects from Bottomless Travel if that's what it was. He goes for a Murmillo play, which I think is his fatal error for this match. I understand he has Trap Stun for my offering. So that's his thought is like, okay, I'm going to deal with a big body and get my Darius set up. I have a Deep Prison. what can go wrong? A lot can go wrong, especially if you don't use your trap stun. He doesn't activate it here. Just lets me go offering. I think his thought here is that he doesn't want to turn off his D prison to just be able to attack over Murmillo. In his defense, I would have just been able to go normal junk, special swap, sink for a 5, sink for Catastor, attack over Murmillo. Now he's left in this awkward spot with Darius, D prison against a Catastor. And I'm going to make another synchro play possibly on the next turn, and offering is still here. So I understand why he can't use his trap stun here. It shows some of the flaws of it against this deck. But again, I need to have a handful of strong monsters in order to justify something like that. If I had another trap, maybe it would be a lot better here. Able to go normal junk, special swap, normal sub, and we're comboing. We have double junk, so we have no fear. If he has torrential, no fear. We have 8k off of either of these junk synchrons. One junk synchron is 8,300 damage with swap access. I go for this line, Unifrog, bounce the sub for follow-up. It's almost always going to be right to go for Mistworm into these multiple set back row when you have, the junk synchron that's just a kill. We're able to Mistworm, clear his back row and his Murmillo, and then still just kill. We go junk, special swap. We need the swap in attack position, which is why we had to bounce there. And then it's 8,800, so for game. Definitely a tough one for him. I don't think he really had a ton of options. His best chance was Test Tiger popping in the previous turn. But again, he's then just facing down with his Caius and a lot of the same issues. He just might not die that turn. He's also going to draw into a dead Dust Shoot and a dead Heavy Storm. So don't think it ended up mattering, but just some tough decisions that I think you can put on Gladiator Beasts, as well as just shining, being able to use Ultimate Offering in their battle phase to summon a Caius. Super relevant in the matchup. So I'm 5-1 going into this next round. Face Icarus 89. Another very talented player. I started off with a T set of Offering plus Sangan. Great hand. How do I lose, right? Well, things can go wrong. Without Treeborn access, without Swap Frog access, as well as 2 dead cards in hand, kind of heavy MST. He sets 1, so I'm like, okay, I know that this is going to be Aoi. We draw the second Offering, which unfortunately is going to be a theme against Icarus. We just see some kind of weird hands. If we draw like either a swap or a junk synchron or a sphere there, yeah, he has to rip it, but then we get to Thestalos, and I think we're in a very good spot. Instead, and again, I get punished here for not setting the MST turn 1, but if I had set it, maybe he sets multiple back row. But now I'm left with this awkward Caius that can't work. And it's similar to the Soul Exchange idea. It's like, okay, into an empty board, we want cards like Thestalos and Sphere over Caius and Ryza. He rises, puts our Sangan to the top, and we're in a tough spot. Again, just these dead cards. But at the same time, his hand isn't amazing either. He has 3 discard traps and a Caius. We're able to Caius the Ryza. Get Substowed. Here's another option. Do you go Substowed and go into Dupe Block, or do you bounce the Caius? For me, I would rather deal the 3,400 and have a Caius. The issue is that I don't really have good tribute fodder. So as soon as he clears my Swap Frog, I need to draw into a monster. We get 3,400 in. No Gores, no Fader, no Track. Looking okay. He draws another Caius. Caius is our back row. It's an MST. We use it on ourselves. What are we doing here? Why did we set this? I'm not really worried about discard traps, so I really just should not have set this MST. It's poor choice, and also a nice read from him to hit it. But he also knew about the AoE, right? Anyways, he attacks. At least now our Treeborn's live for our Caius. Nope. He Phoenix swings it, and we draw Sphere. Not on cue. If we had drawn it a turn earlier, beautiful. Drawing it this turn, terrible. think if we draw the previous turn, there's a good chance he takes the Thestalos and we're able to just sphere combo. But here we are. Instead, we just don't draw tribute fodder and we're left with this awkward hand. He kills us. On to game 2. What a terrible hand. But we have Tragodia. Regular Heat Break. We just, again, no waters. What does it say? What are we doing here? Just not what you want to see in the mirror. You really want to get Treeborn access, which is what Icarus is aware of. He wants to get his Treeborn for his discard trap. I use my discard trap, ditching the Aoi, thinking this card is terrible, at least in this spot. We draw another brick. He's able to use this here. Draws Gores. And again, Thestalos on an empty board keeps coming up. It is nice. He rips us, hits the Tragodia, pretty much the only summonable card in our hand, but at least we still have Soul Exchange. He kept in Heavy Storm against us, which is interesting. Guess he did see the Ultimate Offering, and yeah, I don't blame him. He also might expect us to side in some traps. We get to Soul Exchange, go for Thestalos. We rip the not the greatest card in his hand because we don't really need this offering. He's able to discard trap and then rip our offering with a Unifrog. Not great. We draw another brick. He draws Tributes for Gores, and this is like the second match where he's able to attack with Gores for a lot of damage. Unfortunately, this game just went terribly. We didn't see a water monster. We're going to lose.
Yep. So that's one of those situations that we were talking about earlier where your low water count can sometimes come back to bite me or bite you. But, you know, GG, moving on.
Yep, so this is the last round of Swiss.
X2, need to win.
Need to win. I knew that my tiebreakers were good enough where if I did win, then I am in for top 16. 215 players in this event. We open up, normal swap, the standard. I love this hand. Has a trap. Has Gores.
Alrighty, guys. Sorry about that. Brief pause in the video. I'll try to edit it out. Our microphones had unfortunately died. We're trying some new setup issues here. Setup, things and strategies. So bear with us. But let's continue on.
Yep. So we go normal swap, sentry, pass. He goes substode into swap frog, sentry, attack. We have the option between Gores and Trag. Which one are you going to summon? I think either one's fine. I ended up going with Gores just to have that extra token in case we did draw a tribute monster, like maybe if we drew Thestalos or even Substode or Sphere of Chaos. I would be happy summoning all those into maybe a Mirror Force or Torrential. So, we summon back. Oh, sorry. First we get Dust Shoot. He rips us of our Junk Synchron. We're left in now a more interesting play. Because if we had the Junk Synchron, I think we're a lot more fine overextending into something like Mirror Force or Torrential because we have still good plays to follow it up with. However, with this and him knowing about our Tragodia, it's a little bit tougher. I do end up normaling the swap. Sending swap. To extra normal the uni. My idea is that there's a good chance that this is a Mirror Force. Unfortunately, it is not. There's never really a good chance that they're going to open that. It's only over 15%. But still, I would much rather not use the Gores, keep it as something that's problematic for someone like a Monarch. He has his own Gores, which can be fine because we have the Mirror Force. But he knows about it, so it's a little bit worse. He summons back Tree. And he has the Heavy Storm. So I was the option between, I didn't need to set 2, but I opted to just in case of like a Monarch or MST. Didn't want to just give him an easy target the back row and win. Unfortunately, he had Heavy Storm. So we're going to lose this game pretty quickly. He's able to just attack our whole board, put us down low. I didn't summon Tragodia because it doesn't really do anything there. We're on to game 2. All right, game 2. We open swap Tree. I think, again, this was a mistake. I think you let your Treeborn go back. The reason I did not is because I'm looking at my hand and I lose to Vanity's Fiend really hard. I don't want to just give him some easy line. However, it's just a -1, which is not super exciting. I did like the idea that it gets my swap engrave, and I already have an extra one available. And I do get wrecked by Vanity's Fiend, but the reality is that most Frog players are not going to go for turn 1 Vanities. It's a little too reckless when they've seen cards like Soul Exchange. We're able to take Vanities. He has Raigeki Break. Here, let's just show both at this point. He has Stratos, Rhoda, Rybreak, Swap Frog, Dupe Frog. Good hand, but not crazy. He has the swap and the dupe that you don't really want to see. We go on. Normal Stratos. Add Mally Edge. Pretty normal. He goes in for 28 here, and I'm going to be honest. This is a big mistake. He should never really swap Frog here, in my opinion. I think, especially with Raigeki Break in your hand, you want to make sure that you're not just taking these unnecessary -1s just for the possibility of setting up another Stratos Search. Is Stratos Search really that valuable when you already have Rhoda? You already have Mally Edge as a good normal summon, and you already have Treeborn access? I don't think getting your Treeborn access is that important compared to the possibility of having a good discard for Raigeki Break. Anyways, it's gonna put him in an awkward spot here. Where what do you discard with this Rybreak? Are you gonna discard your Junk Synchron that you just searched? Are you gonna ditch your Mally Edge where now you don't have a good out to a Monarch? I draw Mind Crush, which is just beautiful in this matchup, especially after we know 2 cards in his hand. Actually, we know all 3. Summon back Treeborn, sack for Kai's, knowing that this is Rybreak. Attack, trying to bait out this Rybreak. He doesn't use it. Do I set the Mind Crush? I thought that it was high enough value in our hand to not, and I would rather him Rybreak the Kai's, actually, since we have a ton of other monsters in hand. Interesting spot, though. The thing is, if I don't, then he can just summon back Treeborn and either sack for Mally Edge or Junk, which are both good trades. Sorry, if he popped our Mind Crush, he can attack the Kai's. He Rybreaks, draws Kaiku. Dang. Unfortunate. Puts us in a brutal spot. Probably the only other better draw is like, I don't know, Vanity's Fiend. Maybe Miracle Fusion is tough, but yeah. Kaiku puts us in a rough spot. He banishes both of our water monsters. We have no junk target, but luckily, swap plus dupe, we'll get there. We're able to ditch special. Send swap. So I believe I made the mistake here of not siding in the second Treeborn. You should indeed side the second Treeborn against the mirror. They have a lot of ways to Kai's your cards, and a lot of them are siding in things like Crow and Kaiku. So I ditched this, and now I'm left with a choice between Junk Synchron and Special One back or Kai's. Go with the Kai's play to try to put as much pressure on as possible and leave. I would rather leave the Junk Synchron as follow-up than the Kai's, since I don't have Treeborn access. Attack for 24. He's down to 22. And boom. If we didn't have this Mind Crush here, I think we're in a much tougher spot. He bricks, draws a Dupe Frog. And Vibreak is really good here. But which one do you bounce? Do you bounce the Swap Frog or do you bounce the Junk Synchron? You're expecting to use Raigeki Break a lot of the time. You normal Stratos. He draws another brick of a Fader. This is why I think you side this card out. There's multiple reasons. A, if I'm comboing, I don't think it's going to help you. I'm sorry. I'm going to go like +6. It probably doesn't matter. B, it's terrible into Vanity's Fiend. C, you really want activity in the mirror. And this is just a terrible draw. Most Frog mirrors are going to come down to either whoever gets sub dupe live and like just goes on a rampage, or more likely it's going to end up a grind game where whoever has the more Monarchs and the more Vanity's Fiends is going to win. Yeah, Fader just not doing enough here, I think. I did get a little bit fortunate. If he draws like a Miracle at any point, I think I'm in a much tougher spot, but at least I have the Rybreak. I I had the option when he normaled Stratos to Rye Break the Stratos and keep my swap on board, but I would rather keep the Junk Synchron in hand. He drops the Fader, but he can't. I went Battle Step, Rye Break his monster, redeclare with the Caius, so you actually can't use the Fader there. We're going game 3. Winner probably is going to top cut. Definitely for me, maybe for him, depending on tiebreakers. He's going first. Now, this is the classic Hero Frog challenge of, do you go for E-Call or do you go for Swap Frog? Usually, how I would determine that is look at the rest of your hand and decide, do I need the Treeborn access? Do I want an 1800 beater down the road for something like it's not really going to come up in the mirror, but usually it would be like a Fossil Dino that you might be worried about, or you want them to go for a Dark Grepher line. I also like that Swap Frog doesn't leave anything on the body, so usually in the mirror you want to get your Treeborn access live, so you always have the threat of a Monarch if I was to do something like set Treeborn. He goes for E-Call in the Stratos. Normal Stratos. Gets Ocean. And rookie mistake. I think, again, he has this Raigeki break in his hand. You shouldn't be taking these unnecessary -1s to be able to special swap to bounce Stratos. Especially summoning this Swap Frog in defense is a huge mistake in case I was going to normal swap. You want me to be able to crash and not just attack over the swap. I think this is a pretty important mistake here. There's also a lot of value in Ocean in the mirror. If he was going to be able to, let's say, normal Ocean instead of Raigeki break behind it, that can be a really strong play to get that extra Stratos search without just doing this little bounce play. I think there are like some fringe spots where you want to do something like this, but this is definitely not one of them. Anyways, he does not set Rye Break, trying to keep his Treeborn access live. I'm given the option between set Treeborn and normal sub. I know he has Malicious Edge, so I don't really want to set Treeborn. I also don't want to just lose to MST plus whatever. I want to get Treeborn Engrave, and I also like the idea of having swap in hand for Junk Synchron. We continue on. I have the option of BrainCon, go for like the 1-for-1, go for the Substode combo, but I would much rather keep this BrainCon as maybe a Sphere conversion. We bounce and pass. This is an important thing in the mirror, is you don't want to put cards onto the board if you don't need to. I don't want to give him a Caius target of this D prison. He's going to normal Stratos again, get Prodigy. Again, why wouldn't you add the... Yeah, I just think this is going to put him in a tough spot. His hand is just not going to do quite enough, but he does get to do 18 damage. Passes without setting Rye Break or MST. I think that's fine. I think that's okay. He has the Crow for the Treeborn. You're going to see we keep getting our Treeborn crowed, and we're just thriving. I think it's generally a mistake, especially when we're post-side. We're siding in that second Treeborn. However, maybe it's overreacting to results. Now we have this really nice 1-for-1 line where we can just go crazy and go very plus. We're going to end on dupe because we don't want to lose to brain control. We're going to set D prison, just thinking that our only real way to lose is maybe some like BrainCon Vanities kind of line. But I guess we would Brain Sphere for that. Maybe I didn't need to set D prison here. Why isn't it working? Oh, it's fast forwarding the game as well. Alright, sorry for that. We cut out for a second. So he went for normal Stratos, add Prodigy, go for the Miracle, summon Ab-Zero, tribute Ab-Zero for Malicious Edge, pop our 2 dupes with Ab-Zero. We're facing down 4,400 damage, and he has a Raigeki break. But we held on to brain control, which is going to be important here. We get Unifrog. Puts us down to 18, which is not the place you want to be against Mirror, as they just have a lot of Caius plays that can deal really easy damage. We summon back Tree. Special swap, as I like the idea here of trying to Unifrog the back row before we go for some play. I don't really want to brain control now because it's going to put us to 1,000 where we just die off of Caius. The only justification for it would be if we had a nice way to get an android on board, but we can't do both of them in the same turn. So I go for the Unifrog, attack direct, uses Reggae Break here. Is that correct? I think it's okay. In some ways, you want to leave it up as something to attack over with Maliedge. He pops the Swap Frog, takes 400. We go for junk. We have no choice. We're going to Black Rose here. We don't want to leave up a body that can get brain controlled or Caius. We want to clear his board. We're not going for a 5 there and leaving up a monster for him to pierce. We go Black Rose, set the Rye Break, and pass. He draws Soul Release. Don't play this card. This card sucks. He Soul Releases, gets to banish from, pick 5 cards as a -1. I go for the Rye Break here. I don't need to make this play, but I really want to get the Sphere on board. I really don't want to give him more time to draw into cards like Caius, Miracle Fusion, etc. Rye Break, pop it. Get swap. Summon Tree, sack for Sphere, add junk, attack direct. Put him down to 6k. Set Mirror Force. He bricks, he draws his second Tree Worn. Lucky us. But if he did draw Miracle, we're not doing bad. We have Mirror Force. We have Junk Synchron for follow-up. We're in a commanding lead due to him bricking on some really just not active cards. He drew a Soul Release. He's drawn a Battle Fader previous game. But some of this was set up by him by going for an early -1 and putting himself in a tough spot. The cards that you can add off of Stratos when you already have Maliedge in hand are just not super exciting between Prodigy, Ocean, yada yada. And he had to discard the Ocean to be able to make that play. So, again, okay. We have the beautiful Ultimate Offering at 1,800 life points, though. So what are we going to do? I go Junk, summon Uni, go for Android. Try to get our life up to 24 so that maybe our BrainCon can be live even if we got Caius. I also don't want to worry about some Ab-Zero over Sphere play to kill us. He just goes to special swap and defense, I guess protecting his life. He has the option of tributing for cores here, but I can understand it just loses to any trap, and he kind of wants to keep it to special summon. But I don't really understand special swap here. I would rather just get your cores ready to go. Doesn't really make a ton of sense to me. Okay, he draws Subsode, goes for Subdupe. Unfortunately, that's not going to be enough. We have brain control for game. So, just an unfortunate mirror for him. I think there were some tough choices along the way. But as he said, he didn't really see much. He saw one miracle, no Monarchs this match. So, we were 6-2 going at the top. Last match of the day, going up against Icarus 89. We have our revenge game. Man, did I make some mistakes this match, but also there were some very frustrating spots. Definitely can be happy with a top 16 here. But all right, we draw this hand. What do you do here? In the mirror. You can normal sub, guaranteed get your Treeborn Engrave. You can set Sangan or set Tree or set Dupe. You can, that's about it. He has a Rybreak here, not an Aoi, or else even if he had Aoi, I think he would probably just set Treeborn and Aoi it. We go for the Substoad play, which was incorrect. I forgot that I only had one Treeborn and it was in my hand. In some ways, yeah, just pretty much turn skipping myself for no reason, which not what you want to do. Meanwhile, he doesn't have the greatest hand himself. We draw another monster, and I wanted to get the Treeborn Engrave, and I kind of felt like I needed to make a push here, but do I? If I get my monster Monarched, that's what I was worried about, is just Monarch plus a discard trap sets us a little too far behind. I go for a play to try to get Substoad access back, which, again, Substoad should just be in our hand. We play this one pretty terribly, honestly. He's able to Rybreak our Swap Frog. And we're left in this awkward spot. Do I Synchro for a 4? Not really. But for his hand, he doesn't have anything too exciting either. Probably Soul Exchange Substoad is his most likely line every time here. This Substoad is negated, so he doesn't really need to get rid of it. He is playing Flip Flop, and I think not Death in this deck. He goes for Triple Dupe plus Flip Flop. I go for Sphere thinking, okay, I don't mind if either of these get bounced. But again, we've only seen monsters this game, which is kind of awkward. We also hard drew the Dupe, which can be very relevant in this matchup, especially if you're only playing 2 Dupe, unlike 3 Dupe. If you draw 3, yeah, you're going to brick on it a little more, but you also don't get as punished for hard drawing one of them. He goes for a Lad play, and I just lose here. If I have maybe a discard trap, I can make a lot more plays into Lad. But yeah, unfortunately, we're just going to lose. He bounces. What's my best play? I have a handful of monsters. I decided my only chance was to hope that he was fully bricked up, maybe no Soul Exchange, no Caius or whatever, and I'm just going to go into a Breenac line and go very neg just to try to buy myself some more time. Unfortunately, I have to bounce the flip-flop as well or I die. He's just able to go for this. He draws the Vandies, which, in his defense, if it was a Monarch, I lose all the same. But this makes it so that my Tragodia is dead. And if I had Tragodia, I guess I just get to chump one more battle. But, okay. That one's a wrap. Definitely could have played that one better. We both drew kind of awkward. I think he played better with his awkward hand, though. It is one of the benefits of playing Frog Monarch is that I think the decision trees are, I don't want to say linear, but yes, they're a little bit linear. There's usually 1 or 2 different options that you're picking from. Anyways, I'm faced with another terrible hand. What do? Rybreak. We draw a Treeborn Frog at least. That's a big help. I had the option of using my Rybreak in end phase, but I didn't have a good discard. This play is questionable, but if it is a discard trap, I'm not really that concerned, and I do want to get my things going. Do get punished here, though, for not playing Sangan, because we have to add this Junk Synchron that is kind of awkward. If we had Sangan, at least then we have a way to get Substoad access, or Treeborn access. We go for a Thought Ruler after seeing discard traps and Soul Exchange and Brain Control. Yep. Look at him. He has like one of the brickiest hands of all time. 3 discard traps, Aoi, Torrential, and Ryza. If we lose this one, I don't know what. Yeah, we would definitely be meant to lose. Alright, game 3. Game 3. Let's look at the opening hands. Thesty dupe, Vandy's, MST, offering. I kept an MST, sided out heavy. I think that's fine, especially seeing the discard traps. But this hand's not great. He has salvage plus substode plus Caius Vandy's. That is a lot more like what you want to draw, but you don't really want to draw flip flop dupe. Go forward, send. He actually normals the flip flop. So I'm trying to figure out why he would do this, right? Because I just have so many swap frog attack plays, right? The only real reason he would do this is if he wanted to maybe force me to stick a monster to try to attack over it, or he wants to be able to salvage. That was my guess, is that he wanted a second good target. He didn't want to be able to target and I get to chain summon on the Treeborn. And also, like, if he summons the Treeborn in standby, he wants to make sure he has a second water engrave. Unfortunately for me, I have no Treeborn access. I just have Bricky. So, I set, thinking maybe he's worried about, like, Torrential or something. He doesn't flip it. I might as well set it, right? I don't think, other than a little bit of knowledge that I'm giving him, I don't really mind it. But, nope. I get punished. This is like the pivotal point of the match. Is I set this Dew Frog, and this is my access to Treeborn. Like, if I don't have this card, my whole hand is just terrible. Instead, I think I should consider something like set and try to go from there. But then I lose to Heavy Storm. Do I expect him to keep in Heavy Storm? Yeah, I think. I mean, we did see it at game 2. I don't think he activated it, though. Anyways, Caius D Prison. We normal junk. He does not bounce it, which makes sense. I said 2, thinking that maybe he would have heavied if he had it. But I'm in a tough spot. Again, even this might have been a mistake to normal the junk. With offering in hand, maybe I just want it in my hand in case I do draw a swap frog or a substode to be able to make a line, an OTK line, especially because I get to end on Vandy's for something like Gores, Vader, Drag, whatever. He summons, Soul Exchanges, gets substode, we're screwed. Again, I'm sticking monsters onto the board that let them Soul Exchange, that let them have a nice Caius target. I think I played this pretty terribly. I draw Brain Control, which is a nice top deck, for sure. Lets me out the dupe block and also stick with Vandy's. And he has a hand of 7 monsters. I also have MST for his only trap. Things weren't looking too bad, but he sided in Raikou, which is interesting. It isn't out to just about everything, other than requiring your normal summon. It is it makes a lot of sense. The milling isn't very high value, but you do play salvage to maybe get some extra value. And it does do a nice job when your opponent thinks that you're setting things like Treeborn and Dupe Frog. This can kind of throw them off and maybe get you a tribute summon that you wouldn't normally get with Raikou. Now we're down a million cards. How do we win this, right? He has 7 cards in hand. Treeborn access when we don't. We have double dead offering. I mean, yeah, just a lot went wrong this match. But again, I think it's something that you see a lot with frogs, where non-games are sometimes created and not necessarily just based on like what you drew. So I kind of created this non-game for myself by setting the dupe and letting him Caius it. If I kept it and maybe, let's say, I had my offering and he went for a Caius attack direct, okay, then maybe I can use offering, set the dupe, and try to get access that way. He has another Vandy's. We draw another brick. Again, if we drew like a swap frog, at least we can make a play. Instead, everything looks bad. Until we drop that Soul Exchange. We're not in a great spot, but when he did use his Dew Frog, he added Treeborn, which gave me the hint that he probably does have triple swap in hand. which is what happened. The only other thing that he would add is like maybe a flip-flop, but I think he must have sided it out. We go Soul Exchange. We have the choice between Sphere and Thestalos, but with how tough of a spot I'm in, I would rather get the offering lines available, thin my deck one more card to try to just eventually find that swap access. And also I know that this could be flip-flop. Actually, I think I know it is flip-flop in this instance. So yeah, I would rather have this bounced. Unfortunately, I have Solix, so I forget that. He Rye breaks, pops an offering, draws another Vanity's Fiend, sticks it. And, okay, if we had kept in Sangan that last turn, we would have been able to go Sphere, summon Sangan, sack for Thestalos, and maybe it's a different game. Because then off that Sangan, we can get Substitute. That might have changed everything. This is where I don't know if the side deck is totally solved yet or the side plan. Now I am forced to set the junk. Now, do I tribute for Sphere? Do I tribute for Thestalos? The Sphere can't be destroyed by battle, but I have to take 5 for this, and I have to take 800 in battle damage. So I'm going down to 600. It gives me the junk Synchron, but I decided just to sack for Thestalos with the idea that it gives me 1400 life to work with. I maybe can rip the right card. Luckily, I get lucky. Yeah. Draw a Unifrog. Whatever. At least it's tribute fodder. We get to play the game. We'll take it. And somehow, after we were down so many cards, we have an Android and they have nothing. We're actually in a top deck war. He's down 2 Monarchs, 2 Vanity's Fiends. Could be worse. I wouldn't call this a top deck. He draws Gores, which is fair enough. Sacks for Gores. Tax 300. Okay. We're unfortunately too low on life to normal this Sphere, which sucks. Even if I had... Well, if I had enough life points, I can sack for the Sphere and go for level 8 the next turn. And maybe I get, a Colossal. Still hoping to not draw into a Monarch. We get trolled and draw the second Sphere. We sided one out for this match too, so we just... Another game of just drawing some of the most awkward combinations of cards, but we had to top deck Solex and BrainCon to even be here, so can't complain too much. He makes a mistake here, just forgets about Sphere, gets a little too excited. He could have just normaled and killed me, but doesn't matter. We're dead. Yep. GG Stakerus, good player. Like his deck. Love frog players. I do think Aoi is nice for the mirror. But it definitely got a little closer than it probably needed to. But if I didn't side out the Sphere, Sangan, this might have been a different match. Who knows? So, thanks for watching. Ended up top 16. Final thoughts for what we're going to try next real quick. I think there were some good ideas with the deck, but I would consider keeping the Aoi in if we had more salvages. I do like the Solex. I do think it's better as a 2 of than a 3 of. We've tried 3 before. I think Fader's okay, but I end up siding it out for a lot of matchups. I don't think it's probably worth a spot. I would probably rather play something like Upstart Goblin. I was missing the draw cards for some of these just extreme brick hands. There were so many hands where if I just saw one card, my whole hand is activated. I think that's the type of decks where you want to play draw cards. One Avarice, again, I feel like I barely Avarice today. I think it's probably a 2 of. For the trap lineup, I'm going to keep Mirror Force Torrential, Dust Shoot, Offerings. But I think the other spots you can maybe play around with Compulsor, Dust Tornado. Anyways, final thoughts, Sean.
Yeah, so overall,
I mean, a lot of interesting choices or interesting directions you can take with the deck. I would agree with Tim that I found myself a lot of games starting out Battle Fader when we were at RBT Indy. It comes up once or twice, and you really think it's that good, but sometimes it's just not. That active in your hand. Gores and Trag are overall a lot more impactful overall. Swapping that fader out for, maybe a second salvage, increasing your water count, these sort of things can be relevant. Like Tim said, I don't think the side plan is fully solved for this deck. But I would say that in a deck where sometimes you need to see one card to activate your hand, whether it be sub, swap, or something like that, I think that Sangan can add a lot of value and maybe get you, to a point where you can fight back and potentially win the game. I mean, certainly in that last match, you saw, Tim drew almost an essentially, pretty dead hand compared to his opponent. Yet he was able to fight back and put himself in a position where, if that android had stuck around for one more turn and given, another 600 life points, then, drawing those other spears and, being able to get junk and summon it again, right, could put us in the winning position for the match overall. So, but I just think that, this deck really can fight with some of the best decks. Certainly Offering is not a card that you expect to see in Frogs, but I also think that adds a bit of an edge, a bit of an advantage.
Yeah. So anyways, hope to keep it coming. We're definitely going to try out some new things and see where it goes. But thank you all for watching.
Have a good one. See you guys.
Push.